If some of you are avid hip hop listeners or fans of the genre, you may be familiar with a term that describes wannabe fake tough guys. And that term is called studio gangster. So if you aren't familiar with the term, let me briefly explain. In the real world, out in the streets, there are people, men and women, but I would say mostly men, who are legitimately tough, physically imposing, and have whipped a lot of ass in their day. They are battle proven. They've built reputations around their real life actions. And I'm not glamorizing crime one bit. I'm just telling you what I and what others have witnessed in our individual upbringings. And just give a little more context, I was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles, not exactly Beverly Hills. So in that, you know the hierarchies. Typically, you keep a mental list of the toughest people in your neighborhood, in your school, or in some cases, sports leagues. And you commit that to memory. Why? Because sometimes it's in your best interest to know where you stand in relation to these other people, and in some cases, what the politics are in these individual worlds, right? Okay. In the hip hop world, you have people who they write lyrics and perform songs based on real life experiences. And then there are the others. These are the people that lie about their criminal prowess. They lie about their past deeds, their reputations, and their street cred. These are the people that are called studio gangsters. So basically, when they record music, they broadcast this gangster persona in the studio, again, while they're recording. But when they get out of the recording booth, there's something other than that entirely. They're fakes, they're posers, they're pretend, they're phonies, right? Some of us, myself included, I think I've gotten pretty good at spotting fake, tough men and women. How do we get good at that? Well, the short answer is life experience and just observing people. And I think of every legitimate tough person I've ever encountered or have watched. And I ask myself, what are some of the common traits with these people? What comes to mind is that they don't do a lot of talking, the legitimate tough people. It's like what they say in storytelling. Character is action. You see it in the eyes and the body language. They let their fists or some object or some weapon do the talking when the shit hits the fan. They're calm when the pressure is on, and they don't usually get rattled when they're in a crisis. Now, what about the fake tough people? Well, sometimes you see the polar opposite of what I just described. The fake tough people talk a lot of shit. They make a lot of threats. There's a lot of posturing, but when the heat is on and a crisis is staring right in their face, they wilt and they backpedal. They start making excuses, or they soften their position because they know they can't live up to the potential consequences that may be afoot, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So when I see doughy figures like Senators Ted Cruz of Texas and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and other GOP elected officials hanging around the US-Mexican border wearing camouflage gear and posturing like they're defenders of the universe, like they're the Avengers, is fucking annoying. So in case you missed it, maybe the last couple of weeks, a bunch of GOP officials, congressmen and senators, including the aforementioned fat asses, went to the southern border, both at night and during the day to, in their words, survey the illegal border crossing. So at one point, Ted Cruz was standing next to a tall bush and he pointed off screen and mentioned that there were cartel members, talking about the Mexican cartel members, on the other side of said bush. Now, why nobody simply panned the camera a few degrees to the left or a few degrees to the right and captured this on video is beyond me. You were right there anyway. Couldn't someone have said, hey, cameraman, look over there, over the bush. Like, are you getting this on video? That's the action. Isn't it better to show us the evil that lurks at our border versus, somebody like Ted Cruz narrating with no visual aid whatsoever? He's not that good of a storyteller. We're supposed to believe the guy that lied about why he fled Texas and took his family to Cancun, Mexico, when the state he represents was suffering a crisis with no power during one of the worst or one of the coldest winters on record. Like that guy? And what if he had stood face to face with some of these alleged cartel members from Mexico? Then what? Was he planning to place them under citizen's arrest, wrestle them down to the ground, disarm them, whip out his handcuffs, and then take these dangerous criminals into custody? Are we talking about the same cartel members that commit mass murders, bury bodies in mass burials, and on occasion dismember their victims and hang their corpse out in broad daylight? Or are we talking about Ted Cruz intimidating those cartel members? Are we? I just want to be sure. Because in my opinion, nothing about Ted Cruz screams bad motherfucker. I highly doubt that he's ever been in a physical altercation or a fight with anyone. Although I do recall that one time back in 2016 where he tried to kiss his daughter and she pushed him away as if she got a whiff of his sour ass breath. I remember that moment. It's on video. Do you remember that day, Ted Cruz? I mean, it must be so hard to single out that day because I imagine that wasn't the first time a woman has ever pushed Ted Cruz away who actually hated his guts, blood family member or not. I can't stand the way these politicians build illegal immigration up to be on par with, with the zombie apocalypse and these pudgy men who I doubt have any military or hand-to-hand combat training are the very people that can remedy this problem. Here's why. We've known for decades there's been an issue with illegal immigration for families and individuals illegally entering this country. That's no secret to anybody. Why does that happen? Well, it happens for the same reason illegal immigration happens in other developed countries. People that are fighting to enter are leaving very dire and impoverished situations in their home countries. And they're hoping to, establish a less dangerous and a less impoverished life in places like here in the US, Italy, France, Canada, etc. These people are coming from bad places like Mexico and war-torn countries like Syria and whatnot. So me, being an LA native, we get an influx of both Mexican and Central American immigrants illegally. My experience has been that these people will do almost anything to make a dollar, meaning they'll sell flowers near a freeway off-ramp. They'll do landscaping. They will wait outside of a Home Depot or a Lowe's to get day work. And I also have to say, in my experience, and I'm sure people who live near the border, like in California and Texas, will agree that these people are generally not trying to attract negative attention and direct hostility towards citizens especially. Now, other than the criminality of entering this country illegally, are they committing highly violent acts the way that the GOP or the Republican Party and the racist and xenophobic people are building this up to be, my guess is that it is a small segment of those people that enter illegally, like some of the gang members or some of the cartel members or drug dealers. Why? Because generally, people know that enter here illegally, know that if they're here fucking up, that is a surefire way that they can be arrested, jailed, and deported back to the country that they originally fled from. And if I had to guess, damn it, if I had to guess, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, and those other pretenders already fucking know that. This whole fake tough guy, we're concerned about border security posturing is performative. They're just pandering to the voters and their base, whom some are also xenophobic and racist. That's why, if you look back at some of the footage, Lindsey Graham got on camera with his AR-15, and displayed himself shooting at a target, basically warning that any potential criminal that will come to his house is going to catch hell. Yeah, that's Lindsey Graham, tough guy extraordinaire. But remember what I said about these fake tough guys. I have no doubt that if the shit went down at Lindsey Graham's house, if some people came to get him, some armed people, he would nervously dial 911 and he would sit in some closet cowering, pissing on himself. I'm not buying Lindsey Graham as a predatory badass hunter like Omar Little from The Wire. Get the fuck out of here with that vigilante fantasy shit. And no, I'm not in any way calling on any violence against anybody, sitting politicians included. Illegally crossing the border and entering this country is not cool. I'll say that. It's not a good thing. And no, I will acknowledge that it's not legal. Many of us do understand the implications of such. So people die en route to crossing the desert to get over here. And once they get here, it can stress resources and housing, feeding these people, transportation, and getting these people to and fro. These are tax dollars we're talking about. We get it. But we also get the motivation and perspective of people literally fleeing a horrible situation for their lives. If I was in this situation, I can't say that I wouldn't do it either. All right. But hey, man, if you politicians insist on this posturing and acting tough, I have a request, namely for guys like Ted Cruz. So if you want to show your toughness by apologizing to your wife for kissing Donald Trump's ass for 4 years after he publicly called your wife ugly. Then tell Trump that if he ever does that shit again, he's going to have problems with you. Stand up for your woman. Stand up for your family. Then you could be tough by making things right with the people of Texas, from when you ran off to Cancun and lied about it while your constituents were there in Texas, fighting for shelter, fighting for warmth, fighting for their lives during that unprecedented snowfall and that freezing weather a few months back. Apologize to your family for sucking up to the man that implied that your father was somehow involved with the assassination of JFK, all that crazy shit. Then I want you to apologize to the American people by apologize for adding fuel to the fire to that fucking lie that helped incite the riots at the Capitol on January 6th. And then enough of him. But even Lindsey Graham, you need to apologize for your role in that too. After all, you went on the record several times during the 2016 primaries, and you called Donald Trump out as a lion and crazy crook. Do you remember that, Lindsey Graham? And what about the time you stood before your colleagues and after January 6th, you quote said, "Count me out"? And this was all happening when your colleagues continued challenging the lawful results of the November 3rd election, to which nobody had any credible evidence to support it on the GOP side. You guys are just talking shit. So how are you going to make that right? Why did you say you were out, but then you continued running up behind Trump's ass repeatedly? The toughest thing you can do is admit that you're a racist, party line towing hack. Because the minute you made the comment about, what was it, something to the tune of minorities being able to live in South Carolina provided that they vote conservative, was some racist shit. So stop playing around with it and just come out with it. Just come out with it. And for anybody else listening to this, I can't stress enough on how we all need to be self-aware and not project fraudulent versions of ourselves. But you fucking politicians seem to be the worst at it, particularly on the GOP side. People suffer great loss to the end of being something that they're not. And in this case, we're talking about fake toughness, which I fucking can't stand if you can't tell. And I've said in at least 2 previous episodes, man, toughness can come in different forms. You don't have to pretend to be some badass Rambo kind of a dude. You can do it through verbal, you can do it through nonverbal communication. You can express toughness with silence, protest, righteous bravery, so on and so forth. The hospitals and prisons and graveyards are filled with people who stretched or exaggerated their so-called toughness. Somebody will pull your card someday and call you out, and then where will you be if you're pretending to be this tough guy? So I don't know, man. If you've been listening to me, you may know I generally try to stick to topics either I'm interested in and or have experience. That is why I don't ever come, through these episodes and tell the stories about times I whooped ass or share anecdotes or I punk people out. I have the ability to continue doing that, but that's not my dominating personality, my personality trait, nor is that a priority. That's just something I'm not interested in at this stage of the game. I'm more or less about righteous peace and creating content that, that helps people understand the world and understand themselves a bit better. So that's what I got, man. What are your thoughts on all this? If this behavior describes politicians you voted for, how do you feel about it? Are we taking them too seriously? Am I taking them too seriously? Or is this perhaps some behavior that can potentially carry bigger consequences? I want to hear people's opinion and I want to hear your voices on this. So that's what I got for you. Peace out.